What's up YouTube, this is Ryan from AnnihilatorMTG here, and I'm back again with some more Modern. To contrast the absolute monstrosity that I played last week, I figured that running something a little more budget-friendly might be a good idea. Enter Rakdos Unearth, a build that I 100% assumed was completely irrelevant after the release of Modern Horizons 2, but it's still around, so let's break it down. Rakdos Unearth is a really interesting build, because it sort of wants to do two things at once. On one hand, you have the potential for a solid mid-range deck, while on the other, there lies an overwhelming desire to combo out cheap wins. Balancing these two factors can be very difficult, but I truly believe that if we do it right, this deck has the potential to hit well above its weight class. For the mid-range aspect of this deck, we have some great interaction in the form of Fatal Push, Lightning Bolt, Inquisition of Kozilek, and Thoughtseize respectively. Being able to answer the board while dismantling the opponent's hand is crucial for this style of mid-range deck, but it also has the added bonus of paving the way for our big threats. Speaking of which, let's talk about them. We're running Ball Lightning and Lightning Skelemental as our primary Unearth targets, but a secondary Unearth target that's also tremendously good hardcasted is Thunderkin Awakener. This card is just a menace. It adds a lot of power and redundancy to our builds, and oftentimes draws several cards out of the opponent's hand in an attempt to remove it, especially during the Evoke era of the Modern metagame. If these cards go unanswered, especially Lightning Skelemental, the game will be over in no time at all. It's also worth noting that the utility that we get from both Stitcher's Supplier and Seasoned Pyromancer is absolutely incredible. This goes even further when you account for Village Rites, a card that I've underestimated far too many times. I don't expect this deck to break the meta or anything, but I have high hopes for what it can do, so let's not waste any time here and head straight into the first match. Alrighty, looks like we found our opponent. Best of luck to you, my friend. And this hand is not great. Let's try it again. Much better. We'll keep and ship the mountain. They start things off with a basic island and nothing else. Seeing that they're playing Lurrus, this is either the worst shadow start of all time, or it's mill. We draw Ball Lightning. Let's play the fast land, then cast our Inquisition. Oh wow, they respond with a Spell Pierce. Up next, they untap and cast a Crab. That's crazy. I've never really seen Spell Pierce in a mill list, but maybe the deck is getting more and more aggressive. Either way, they play a fetch land, milling us for 3, then they crack it for a Watery Grave, that hit a Skelemental, drawing a Fatal Push, excellent, we'll cast that straight away, the crab dies, then we can play a fetch and see what else they got. Here comes an island, then they cast a Fractured Sanity. This is a bit of a risk, but we'll crack our fetch in response, grabbing a Blood Crypt. Seems like they don't have an Archive Trap, beautiful. We draw a Lightning Bolt, let's play a Blood Crypt untapped, then cast the Ball Lightning, attacking them for 6, that takes them down to 13 life. They cast another crab, then they play a Field of Ruin, milling us for 3. Instead of destroying one of our lands, they add their companion to hand. Absolutely perfect timing on that fetch land. Let's play and crack it for a basic. This gives us an excellent opportunity to escape a copy of Kroxa. They discard a Field of Ruin, taking their life total down to 10. After much deliberation, they play a swamp, then they activate the field. We grab a swamp, and they grab an island. There's an Archive Trap, that's pretty brutal. With that said, their final card is the Lurrus, which they cast immediately. With 5 cards remaining, this is not a good position, but with the right sequencing, we can probably make this work. Or we can just draw Unearth, that works too. Guess we'll just Lightning Bolt their Lurrus, same thing for their crab, then we Unearth a Skelemental, and they scoop it up, nice. I've said this many times in the past, and this could totally be wrong, so I apologize if that's the case, but mashing together your sideboard with your main board just feels bad. So what we're gonna do is cut the Seasoned Pyromancers and 2 copies of Village Rites. That way we can bring in 2 copies of Collective Brutality and 2 Abrades. Not entirely sure how this is gonna go, but let's give it a shot. This hand is not very exciting. On the bright side, every time we mulligan, they have to mill us for 1 more. Jokes aside, this hand is much better. We'll ship the Ball Lightning. They get things started with a Darkslick Shores and with Soul Guide Lantern. Well, that's not great. We draw a Lightning Bolt. Let's play and crack a Bloodstained Mire for a Blood Crypt. Then we'll cast a Thoughtseize. They have a Crypt Incursion, Fatal Push, 2 Fractured Sanities, and a Field of Ruin. If we're unable to win quickly, then taking Fractured Sanity seems like the only option. Looks like they drew an island. The good thing about this is we can easily force them into cycling the Sanity by threatening a discard. Drawing a Blood Crypt. No time like the present, so we'll cast Thoughtseize number 2. In response, they cycle the Fractured Sanity. Wow, and they have even more graveyard hate. If they have multiple pieces, it only really makes sense to take the Fatal Push. Now that we know what they have, we can play and crack a fetch for another Blood Crypt. We want to do this now just to avoid an Archive Trap. Up next, they cast a Crab, followed by a Field of Ruin. That mills us for 3. Then they jam the second Lantern, exiling a Skelemental. There's another Blood Crypt. Since we aren't in a huge rush, let's just play it, then bolt their dude. I want to hold on to the Skelemental as long as we can. turn. If they get impatient with their lanterns, we can easily get ahead. Speaking of which, they crack one on our end step, then they play a Polluted Delta and send it back. There's a castle, let's play the fast land, then we'll cast the Skelemental. I don't really like doing this, but them having 2 cards left is kinda perfect. The spell resolves, then we attack them straight away. That leaves them at 14 life with a discard trigger on the stack. Whoa, what? They cash in their lantern just to draw a card? That's very surprising. Banning a Crypt Incursion and a Polluted Delta, then they crack their fetch for a basic, activating the field. We get a mountain and they get a swamp, so it appears they were protecting the archive trap. That's a lot of ground given up for only 13 cards. Seemingly out of desperation, they add the companion to hand, and not much else. We draw more lands, that's cool. Let's escape the Kroxa, discarding an archive trap. Then we'll play the castle and send it back. Before anything else, they jam their Luris. Then they cast a crab. No lands, that's extremely good for us. Drawing a copy of Unearth, beautiful. We'll cast it to bring back the Thunderkin. Then we move into combat, and they scoop it up. GG's opponent. Alrighty, looks like we found our opponent. Best of luck to you, my friend. And this hand is kinda nuts, but we'll keep it. They get things rolling with a tapped Breeding Pool. We draw fast land. Let's play a tapped Blood Crypt and send it back. Up next, they play a Hinterland Harbor of all things. I'm a little confused about what they're actually playing, but it's safe to assume that they have counters. Drawing an Unearth, that's really good. Think we'll just play the fast land and continue to wait. Second verse, same as the first, as they play another Hinterland Harbor. Hitting a Stitcher Supplier. Let's not waste any time here, so we'll jam the swamp, then cast Skelemental number 1. In response, they counter it with a charm. That's not the end of the world, although their next turn could be huge. With that said, they merely play a basic island and hold up their spells. That would be a Village Rites. I don't expect it to work, but let's play a mountain and cast Skelemental number 2, which they counter almost immediately. That's fine. We'll try the Unearth. That resolved in such a way that makes me feel like they F6'd, so we should have this one. Let's swing in. That takes them down to 14 life, discarding a basic island and a Renin 6. Oh duh, this is probably Temur Reclamation. Considering our slow start, I'm a little surprised that we've made up the ground that we have. Now we just gotta hope they don't have the enchantment. During their main phase, they cast a Sorcery Speed Archmage's Charm, choosing to draw. That's wild, and they even missed a land drop. We draw a copy of Ball Lightning, let's cast the third Skelemental, attacking them and making them discard. There goes a counterspell and a copy of Growth Spiral. Before we end our turn, let's cast the Village Rites on our dude. That nets us 2 lands. Guess we'll just play and crack the fetch for a Blood Crypt, casting the Supplier. Was hoping that we'd hit Kroxa or something, but this should be more than good enough. Once again, they fail to find a land. That's both good and bad depending on their counter situation. Drawing a Blood Crypt, let's play it. Then we'll cast the Ball Lightning, attacking them for 7. Before damage, they cycle a Shark Typhoon, choosing to block our Supplier. That mills some more junk and takes them down to 2 life, after which we'll cast the Seasoned Pyromancer, hitting a Ball Lightning and a Thunderkin. Amazing. Seems like their mana troubles are over, but it's going to take a lot to stop us now. Even more so, considering we just drew an Inquisition. That goes first. In response, they cast a Charm to draw 2, seeing a copy of Lightning Bolt, Fire and Ice, Memory Deluge, and a land. There goes the Bolt. Let's cast our Thunderkin, then the Ball Lightning, and they scoop it up. Nice. I'm not entirely sure what we want to sideboard in this matchup, so I guess we'll just cut the Fatal Pushes and 2 copies of Village Rites. That way we can bring in 2 Collective Brutalities and the Voidwalkers. Looks good to me. As a mid-range hand, I'll take this every day of the week. They get things started with a Misty Rainforest and nothing else. We draw a Supplier, phenomenal. Let's play the fast land and cast our Inquisition. Looks like they've got a Lightning Bolt, Fire and Ice, Hinterland Harbor, 2 copies of Memory Deluge, and a Wilderness Reclamation. That's a solid hand. We'll take the Lightning Bolt and see if they draw any more mana. During our end step, they crack their fetch for a Triome. Then we see a Hinterland Harbor, drawing a copy of Voidwalker. For now, let's just jam the Blood Crypt and cast our Supplier, hitting some fairly decent cards. They play a Scalding Tarn and maintain their holding pattern. On their end step, we'll cast the Village Rites, milling over a bunch of lands and drawing some absolute heaters. We see a Lightning Bolt. Let's play another Blood Crypt, then cast the Skelemental. After resolving, they crack their fetch for another Triome. Then they cast the Ice. Fine by me, we had to get that out of their hand anyways. Right on time, as they play a castle and cast the Reclamation, untapping before our next turn. That's funny, always happy to see another Skelemental. With that said, we're going to attempt to bait them with this Voidwalker. In response, they cast cast a Memory Deluge, no doubt wanting to keep that away from us if at all possible. The spell resolves, then we'll unearth, targeting the Thunderkin. That resolves as well. As we swing in, we'll target the Skelemental, hitting them for 7 and making them discard 2. Up next, they cast another Wilderness Reclamation. With 2 of those, things can get out of hand rather quickly. Here comes a Breeding Pool, no doubt being leveraged for something nutty. After untapping a bunch, they flash back a Memory Deluge, doing its best dig through time impression. There's a Village Rites, so now we gotta figure out how to potentially win through 2 counterspells. Because that seems like a very difficult thing to do, I think we're just going to attack, targeting the Skelemental. In response, they flash out Endurance, then they block the Thunderkin. Before damage, let's cast the Village Rites, hitting a Swamp and another Lightning Bolt. Once the attack goes through, they're in double bolt range. Guess we'll have to try it. Here comes bolt number 1, then bolt number 2, and that'll do it. GG's, opponent. Alrighty, looks like we found our opponent. Best of luck to you, my friend. And this hand is supremely excellent. Let's get things started with a Blood Crypt into a Supplier. That mills over a Skelemental. Phenomenal. On their turn, they play a basic island and cast a copy of Serum Visions. We draw a fetch land. Think we'll just play a basic, then cast the Thunderkin, just in case they have a force. Ooh, but they evoke a Solitude instead. Alright, they got us. In the meantime, we'll attack with our dude, and despite losing tempo, we have a solid material advantage. They play a Glacial Fortress and pass immediately. There's a Ball Lightning. The best thing we can do at this point is take advantage of our threats being more mana efficient than their answers, so we'll begin by jamming a fetch, then casting a copy of Unearth. In response, they hit it with a counter, that's fine. Then we'll crack the fetch for another Blood Crypt, casting Unearth number 2, it resolves, then we'll swing in for 7, taking them down to 12 and making them discard 2. Oh wow, they discard a Plains, but more importantly, they discard a copy of Time Warp. Interesting, so I guess this is either a Planeswalker heavy variant of blue-white control, or much more likely, blue-white taking turns. Either way, they play an island and pass once again, drawing a Lightning Bolt. I don't like doing this, but let's cast a Sorcery Speed Village Rites, hitting another Ball Lightning and a Skelemental. Guess we can just do this the old-fashioned way. On our end step, they flash out a Dictate of Kruphix. That's a little scary. After drawing another card, they play a fetch and maintain their holding pattern. Before our next turn, let's cast the Lightning Bolt. Then we draw 2 pieces of hand attack. If we had another land, this would be perfect, but I guess we just gotta cast the Skelemental. In response, they crack their fetch for a Prairie Stream, then they flash out a Snapcaster Mage, targeting the counterspell, which they cast straight away. Up next, they cast a copy of Exhaustion, attacking us for 2. We draw a Seasoned Pyromancer and a Fatal Push, nothing we can do about it. Once again, they attack us straight away. We're at 12, then they play a land and send it back. There's some mana, beautiful. Let's play the Summit, then we'll cast a Thoughtseize, gotta take the Cryptic command. That allows us to jam a Ball Lightning, attacking them for 6 damage. They play a land, then cast the Teferi, choosing to uptick. We should have this one in the bag, so let's play a land, then cast our Inquisition, and it looks like they've seen enough. Nice. I'm not entirely sure sideboarding in this matchup is going to be all that relevant, so I guess we'll just cut the Fatal Pushes and 2 copies of Lightning Bolt. That way we can bring in 2 Collective Brutalities and the 2 Void Walkers. Looks good to me. This hand is a little light on early game stuff, so I think we're gonna try it again. Yeah, this'll work. Let's ship the Kroxa. They get things started with a tap land and nothing else. We draw another Unearth. Let's play the Blood Crypt untapped, then cast the Supplier, milling over 2 of our best targets. On their turn, they play a basic island and continue to wait. Thank goodness they didn't have a Spreading Seas. Drawing an Inquisition. Let's play the Mountain, then cast Unearth number 1. The spell resolves, then we'll swing in for 7, discarding a Hollowed Fountain and a Snapcaster, continuing to fight the good fight as they play a Glacial Fortress. That's just another copy of Unearth, might as well cast it. The spell resolves, then we'll swing in once again, taking their life total down to 6 as they discard a Dictate and a land, after which they flash out a duplicate copy. They draw an extra, play a land, then send it back. We see a Thunderkin and a copy of Village Rites. Not sure this matters, but we'll cast the Thunderkin. In response, they activate their land, and it looks like they've seen enough. GG's, opponent. And there you have it. This might not be the strongest deck in the world, but it can win a lot more games than you might usually expect. And even looking past that, it's an absolute blast to play. I don't have much else to say about it, but if you already run Rakdos Midrange, try your hand at a variation of this build. It's a lot of fun. I've got a bit of a channel/life update. This week I received my 3rd dose of the old healing salve, and good lord, I am just exhausted. I'm gonna do my best not to take any unneeded time off, but I know that you all have been incredibly supportive since the beginning, so I'm sure that some of you will tell me just to do it anyways. Regardless, know that I appreciate you. If you like my content, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. This stuff really does help, so thank you. And as always, stay safe out there and have a good one.